Hello, 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 and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Jameelah, and I'm a master manifester, and I'm sure you are too. The name of this channel is Manifesting Magic the Practical Way, um, and that is what I talk about. How we manifest the magic in our lives, create the lives that we choose on a continuous, regular basis, because it's always happening, and what are some practices we can put in place that will help our manifestations show up in the forms and fashions that we prefer, right? Well, today I'm talking about validation. So, when we hear the term validation, we often think of someone needing someone on the outside to tell them that they're great or that they're wonderful and that they're, capable, that they're successful, that they're beautiful, and all those sort of things, right? And while that is a form of validation, another form of validation that I love to, of course, focus on is internal validation. It means you're telling yourselves all those wonderful things that I just mentioned, as opposed to needing to hear it from the outside, right? Um, we have oftentimes where we would like to hear it from certain people with certain areas in our lives, but you can't really control how people feel about what you have going on. And so often getting others into your validation process can be too much pressure for them because they don't feel the same way about the stuff that you're excited about. They just don't. So then you're getting people to kind of tell lies or to placate you or patronize you, and you don't really want that, do you? Um, Another form of validation I feel is when you were in a situation and you know that something was up or something was not right about the situation, but everything in your surroundings was saying that everything is all good, right? I was thinking about a position that I was working, I was doing contract work, and it was for a lot of major corporations creating some educational technology related learning programs, right? And the place where I was doing it was so utterly unorganized and so utterly unworkable, my thoughts. But in the process of the day, everybody I was around, the manager, the people I work with, they all seemed to be handling it a lot better than I did. On the outside, that's what it felt like. And so over time, I would share my concerns and say that this is a problem. This is, an intricate issue. I'm getting headaches at night. I'm working too long. Am I the only one falling behind like this? Is this a problem? And then they would go like, oh, well, what do you mean? What is the problem? Tell me. Like, I just don't understand. And I was like, okay, so I'm really off on this. Like, I'm really far off. Like, I am so far off on it. That's what I would think every day. And it was a version of being gaslighted. I was feeling something really clear and seeing something really clear in the environment that was wrong. Yet the people that I was interfacing with were telling me that, what is the issue? Seems like you're having the issue, right? And a red flag for me that I ignored, because we do ignore red flags when we want things to work, was that two people quit under the same circumstances when I first started. Like one of them didn't say why she left, but she seemed completely overwhelmed. And the other one flat out said, I'm stressed out. And I kind of, because groupthink is powerful, I kind of jumped on the bandwagon and said, one of the girls was just like, well, why was she stressed out? Why just not tell us that she needs help with this and that? Some people just need help and they don't want to say they need help. And I was just like, yeah, why get stressed out? Why not just tell people that you need help, right? And that is kind of the ship that sank me. And when I wound up finally leaving, it was just a sporadic, I'm losing my mind. This is not a good place to be. And I don't know what it is. Nothing is being changed or fixed. And I feel like I'm sinking and nobody's addressing it. And so I kind of let it go. And I was just like, well, I didn't want to be a quitter, but I kind of was one. And then, that was months ago. I can remember it was like Valentine's Day. I remember that weekend, that's the weekend I was like, I'm done with this, right? It was the Friday and I was like, I'm done. I got to be done with this. And so, mind you, it is like, what, June now? I received a message a couple of days ago from one of the women who started working there right before I was leaving. And she was asking me about everything that I knew to be true when I was working there. She must have said verbatim the concerns I had, the issues that were happening, the overwork, the no systems, all these issues that were happening, and how she feels like she is not being validated in saying that something is wrong. Mind blown. Mind blown, not only because I'd settled on the fact that, well, maybe I was not good enough for it. Maybe I just wasn't the right fit. Maybe I wasn't as well equipped as the other people who were there. Maybe I just wasn't. When I left, nobody reached out to me and said, except for one girl. And like I had lunches and, conversations with the CEO and the CIO. And when I left, nobody even reached out and said, what was it? What can we do to make it better? Blah, blah. And I'm like, I was just a failure and it didn't work out. And nobody even tried to come and say, well, maybe we'll get better and make it work for you. None of that happened. And so I was always thinking that I was the problem to a certain degree, even though I knew better. So fast forward to now, I received a message in my LinkedIn account that mentioned everything verbatim that I said was wrong. And this person that just started, she said, you just was quitting when I left. Did your resignation have anything to do with these issues? Bam, 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 like 1 through 10. Yes. When I tell you, that was one of the most validating feelings I've had in a very long time when it came to knowing something was wrong, knowing I was being gaslit, and knowing that I had to let it go in order to move on and be whole. But then hearing someone tell me, and I didn't want to do anything but validate this woman to the core. I'm like, you are absolutely right. You are probably talented. You probably have everything you need to be successful in this job, but they are not setting you up for success to get this work done. And they're treating you like you're the problem. It is an epidemic in that place, and it's going on. And but I didn't even know her. I only saw her in a couple of meetings, and right before I left, we went back and meet in conversation like about 5 or 6 times. And I was like, good people, toxic environment, very toxic, right? Because people can be good and still have toxic ways that they don't know are toxic, right? And I say all that to say this. It probably was more long drawn out than what it should have been. Sometimes we look for validation in the wrong places, right? Sometimes we look to be validated for something in toxic environments where the toxicity is currently still happening. And you're just like, no wonder I couldn't feel validated in those environments, because the environment itself was toxic. Nobody could have guessed that this is what's going on, and then this is how we can fix it, because they are right in the middle of it too, right? And so something I started doing lately, because I realized that friendships and like siblings and like parents, all those people, they're wonderful helps, right? Even mates, and especially children. You can have really good conversations with them. You can share your ideas and talk and all that. But when it really comes to digging a little bit deeper into some things that have been really a problem for you in your life, you're probably going to need to have therapy, right? So just recently, I've been in therapy many times before, different, marriage, when I was married before, therapy for myself. And I was just like, I don't know what's happening here. I'm sinking, blah, blah, blah. And the minute I feel better, I kind of stop. But I was just thinking, like, you really need someone to check in with you so that you know that you're not crazy when it comes to certain things. And it needs not to be a person that is so connected to you that they just love you so much that they want to just see you do great, or that they love you and think they know you so much that they're just going to, chat you into your detriment, right? So I don't bring certain problems to different people in my family environment, friends. I don't do that. So most recently, I decided to sign up. I was like, I feel like I need to go to therapy again. I really could use a sounding board, because I really want to understand what is this thing that's happening in my world. And when I tell you, I was explaining some of the conversations that I was having, and I was just like talking through my thought process and what was going on. And when the therapist was like, well, you're being gaslighted. Your feelings and all that and what you're thinking in situations, they're not being validated. And I was like, I know, right? So, so sometimes we lose our strength, and we lose our ability to see ourselves objectively when you have a situation where everything on paper looks right, but there's a part of you that's not clicking with that situation. Just like that position, that job, everything was perfect. Work from home, this much money, type of people I work with and all, but it was not right. And I had no sounding board for the most part to say, you know what? I understand what you're going through with that. I'm validating what you're feeling. And if you say, because I trust you and I love you and I care about you, if you're saying that this is a problem, then I want your mental health to be okay. You should walk away from that sort of thing. When you don't have anybody in your life that's telling you these things to that degree, that's telling you what you're feeling is valid, that places that operate like that have poor structures. You don't have to do that, right? When I tell you I was talking about some other things in other parts of my lives with the therapist and was saying, these are the things that are issues that I'm dealing with. This is what's being said. Let me just lay out exactly what the conversations are. Let me just lay out. And they just go, They have no insight on what you're going through. Nobody, no details. And it's just like, that sounds like gaslighting. This is from a very, objective perspective, This sounds like what you're going through is not being validated. And you're just like, right? And it sounds like you have loose boundaries when it comes to your psyche, and you're not allowing yourself to validate what you need and want for yourself. And I'm like, man, right? And that's such a weird thing to hear from a person like me, because I've always been a person who was able to validate myself and who was able to tell myself, you know what, I have boundaries. These are those. This is this. This is that. But we can slip sometimes when it comes to creating healthy boundaries, and it comes to validating ourselves, and it comes to knowing when we're not being validated, especially in relationships or environments where we're too closely connected, right? Say this is with your children, and one of them knows your soft spots, and one of them are always in a position to kind of mess over you a little bit, and you let them do it. You may have boundaries in every other place of your life, your workplace. People email me for stuff over the weekend. I'm not answering none of that stuff. I don't do that. It doesn't mean anything. And I already know when my time stops. Monday, I'll talk about it again. And so you got these real clear boundaries that you have. When you go in your bedroom, you shut the door, the children know, oh, she's doing her time, right? Real clear boundaries. People can't call you with their nonsense because you got real clear boundaries. But when it comes to sometimes new connections or new relationships or new environments or things that are still fresh to you in your psyche, you can sometimes forget your boundaries and forget what it means when it comes to being validated, and what it means when it comes to people truly acknowledging how you feel about something, or how something that they said or did or believed, and how that made you feel, right? How it affected the way you felt about yourself. So I was all over the place when it comes to validation today, but that was just a topic that was hanging on my head. It's just like, we have to know the difference between when someone brings us something and they saying, this is how this thing made me feel. I wanted you to be excited about this thing that I had going on in my life, and you said that it didn't interest you and that you didn't want to be caught up in it, even though you were my friend or my confidant, and you were just like, I just don't want to participate in that thing. And I was like, okay. And I walked away, and I was like, well, everybody has the right to not be, but can I feel bad about that? Do I have the right to be taken aback by your lack of interest? So we can talk about that, right? It's okay. And so when I bring this to you and say, your lack of interest or your lack of caring, it really bothered me and it really hurt my feelings. And your only response is to defend what you initially said. That's not validation. That's further stumping on the person who's already in a position of feeling bad. Validation would be like, man, I apologize. I really didn't know saying that was going to make you feel that way. The last thing I want to do is hurt your feelings. If I thought for 1 second that me explaining it the way that I did was going to be something that hurt your feelings, I would have chosen another way to go about it, right? That's validation. So this is what I'm working on in my life. And I don't know about you in your life and what you're working on, but I think at any given time, all of us can use some validation, whether it's our internal validation or whether it's from the people that we call our friends and families, spouses, children, mate, all those sort of people, our workplace. You have to remember that when you are feeling something or when something affects you deeply or when you have intuition or when something is just rubbing you the wrong way, you have the full right, you have the full, honest, complete, and whole right to tell people exactly how a situation affected you. And when you express how a situation affected you without going, you did something to me, but you're just saying, you know what, that made me feel some kind of way. I just feel like that. If they do not acknowledge or validate that you are affected the way you are affected and try to get you to feel wrong about the way that you are affected, that is toxicity. And we need to know when toxicity is happening. Sometimes parents do this thing and don't know. Sometimes we do it to our children and are not aware of it. Sometimes relationships, mates, friends, we do this sort of thing and we don't know. You need to acknowledge what the person is feeling, what your role in is, how they are feeling, and then you need to say, that was not my intention. In the future, I will do my best to not do things or say things in that manner if they're going to affect you that way. But telling someone that it wasn't what I meant for you to feel, it wasn't how I meant for it to come off, and making them feel like how they feel about it is a mistake or an error on their part is so toxic. It's so trippy because what it does, it makes people, it puts them in a position to where they're no longer believing their own intuition, to when they're no longer validating their own feelings about things. And then they're also starting to see themselves as a problem, which creates insecurity. It creates insecurity in the person, and it also creates insecurity in the relationships that we have connected to these people. They lose confidence in places where they shouldn't lose confidence in their words and their feelings and how they act and move around in the world. And goes along with the lines of people with this common saying that people say that is a very rude way to respond to someone when you've done something that have afflicted them in some kind of way and you didn't mean to, and your only response to them, and when they come bring it to you in a very mature and honorable manner, of course, is, I'm sorry you feel that way. That is the opposite of what you should be doing. What you should say is, the last thing I want to do is to say anything that makes you feel bad about yourself, anything that makes you feel less confident and less whole than the person that you are. And if I did say, and if me saying that made you feel that way, in the future, I'm going to try to find a better way to address something related to this topic because of the way that it affects you. And my apologies. If you don't like the words I'm sorry, I don't say I'm sorry. I don't like saying, that's negative self-talk to me. I'm sorry. No, I'll say my apologies. My goal is to do better. I like good relationships. I like good connections. I like everybody to feel heard and validated in any situation. I'm not going to make you feel wrong for your feelings. I'm not going to make you feel wrong because you don't believe the way that I believe, right? I want you to feel validated because the more validated you feel, the stronger you are, the more confident you are, the more secure you are, and the better you are at being able to show up the way we both need us to show up in this given relationship, right? And now that's some strong emotional maturity, but I think we all can use a dose of it, right? So anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful Sunday and that you are feeling more secure. You're feeling stronger. You're feeling more confident in knowing that if you were in any situation where you were not being validated, that does not mean your feelings are not valid. It just means that you are in a toxic connection with someone where either you can clean it up and it can be fixed or it can't be, and it's a lower vibration connection that may have to be severed. It just depends on where you are, and only you know where you really are. And the only way that you can be clear about where you really are, you have to validate your own feelings in your mind, because if you don't have that part done, then you're flip-flopping constantly. You're just like, well, maybe I do feel bad. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe I am maybe I don't understand. And if anybody's letting you get that insecure and they're letting you get that um un I can't even find a good word for it. If they're letting you get that insecure in a connection, there's something that needs to be checked in that connection, because there's a lot of toxicity there, and it needs to be corrected, because then you'll stop relying on your own intuition. You'll stop relying on your own mindset. You'll stop relying on what you know and feel to be true for you, and you'll start relying on theirs. And that's no way to be, right? And when I tell you that message from that woman in LinkedIn was so much validation, it was beyond. And it's not even like, aha, it was, because most of the time when you finally get validation in these things, you don't even care anymore. But it was playing a role in another situation that I'm dealing with, where there's a similar circumstance. And I know that the way I feel and the way that I see things and what I'm feeling, my intuition, is valid and it's real. And when I have someone telling me, um, that's not the intention, or when someone is passive aggressively saying something to you that has some sting or some malice in it, and they're telling you there's none of that in there, and you're like, I'm reading these words, this is what this says, and then you share it with a therapist and they're just like, yeah, I don't know what person would have not thought that wasn't passive aggressive. You're just like, I know, right? I'm 42 years old. I've been on this earth for a minute. I know when I come across these things, and I know that I'm not a person that runs around going, untrustworthy, untrustworthy, untrustworthy. And so, you got to know who you are. So when you're being brought into these different environments, when you're being brought with these different connections, and you're creating new connections, new boundaries, when someone says something to you and it's off, you'll be able to hold on to your foundation and say, I'm not feeling that, and I'm not gonna go ahead and just erase my feelings in the way that I see this. I'm just letting you know that it doesn't sit right with me. You may not see it the same way, but this is where this is going in my files, in my file system. This is going into questionable behavior over there. And mind you, I may not get a resolution to it. I may not even fully ever understand why it was done. But I'm not going to backtrack and tell myself that something was wrong with seeing something for what it was. I will validate myself. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day.